This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jaden Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to the annual Yellowwallpod Season Awards. So we celebrate another season in the books. We of course need to do our annual award show. I don't even know if we did one last season, but doesn't matter. We're here now, we're doing it. And as is tradition, we have a few listener categories. We have a weird spreadsheet that will amount some points for the individual awards. But of course we will start with the general awards. The tradition here is that usually the winner of the Yellowwallpod Season Awards is not necessarily the best player, depending on what kind of weird categories we have. And of course, here with me are my co-hosts Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, excited as always for our annual or not so annual award show.
Almost always annual season award. Yeah, just imagine us all in tuxedos, of course.
I mean, we also we used to do half season awards, if memory serves.
I'm kind of glad we're not doing that anymore. It's just too much, I think. Anyhow, also here Matthias Zug, also in a very beautiful tuxedo.
Yeah. I didn't even wear a tuxedo at my wedding, so I wore a suit. So I'm definitely not wearing a tuxedo now.
All right, so let's dive right in. The first award is the Moment of the Season award. And Matthias, since you have the worst memory, you get to start, so you don't forget again.
Moment of the season was when it ended. I think that was the greatest.
That was mine too.
Greatest moment of the season. Is
Last literally just
over.
said before we started, let's, for the sake of the listeners, not all have the same moment of the season. But I guess all right, I have to find a new one. But yeah. Is when it's ended. Fair enough?
No, moment of the season overall, gosh, I don't even know. I mean, yeah, it's hard to get past when it all finally ended or when Nuri Shahin finally got sacked. That was my moment of the season.
Lars?
Yeah, I think we were all struggling a little bit because obviously it wasn't the greatest of seasons. A lot of inconsistency, so maybe we don't have to look at it from a particularly positive perspective. So maybe the moment of the season is when the traveling fans were basically chastising the team in Kiel in one of the last matches of Nuri Shahin's tenure, because that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. That game, losing 2-4 against Kiel, not very good. Or maybe if we wanted to be more positive, but I guess we...
I think it's a positive moment because we do have next coming up the Rock Bottom Award, so...
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of figuring we are probably going to be talking about this game at some point during this show, so, maybe I'm giving away something, but perhaps the moment of the season just in general, how Dortmund reacted in the second leg against Barcelona when the first game was pretty much a schooling. And the second leg was much better. And it's not like any of us really, got too excited in terms of actually making it out of the quarterfinals, but just the reaction against what I would say was probably the best side in Europe this season was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with this, but I'm more coming down where Matthias is. To me, it is really the end of the season, the final whistle, and bagging Champions League qualification. That's sort of summing up the comeback that Dortmund pulled off, and actually, making that happen to me is the moment of the season. Maybe not so much the final whistle, but more the accomplishment in general. But still. Now when we go over to the Rock Bottom Award, It is funny because you just talked about the Kiel game, and I think emotionally Kiel, Bologna, this whole 4-game losing streak is maybe where we're at, but also like the 2-0 loss away to Bochum is a very good candidate, and of course the 1-0 loss at home to Augsburg in the 90s shirt special edition that Dortmund sported that day with like a weird set piece goal that was kicked by Marius Wolf. That is also a these are all very strong candidates for me because Dortmund did not instantly turn things around under Niko Kovac. But I think the rock bottom award in my perspective, and if you listen to the last episode, it's almost clear where it is. It's actually the hiring of Nuri Sahin and the obvious bungle from our front office to make that decision and to hire a coach on such little merit. That to me is still the overarching rock bottom of the season, and I don't think anything else comes close to that. Matthias, what is your rock bottom award?
I mean, rock bottom is when you look at, the overall, when you hit that rock bottom point. And while I agree with you that the hiring of Nuri Sahin was the biggest mistake of the season, rock bottom really is that stretch, that loss to Kiel, and that, that time there, also that loss to Bologna. Is like Dortmund were as bad and as at rock bottom as they could be.
There was also a 2-0 loss in Frankfurt in between that.
It's right in there, and it's like, it's just, this is the epitome of a bad season for Dortmund standards, and then it came up from that point on. Obviously, it was a bit of a rough start under Kovac, but we talked about that last week where I said, well, what do you expect? He's not a magician. You can't just flip a switch and change the endemic bad culture that was there before over the course of a month. And the fact that he did it over the course of less than half a season is already, honestly, kind of a miracle. So rock bottom is really that stretch, kind of epitomized by the loss to Kiel.
Yeah, and maybe also the fact that, there wasn't really a clean cut between first half of the season and second half of the season. But that was in early to mid-January of this year. And, the decision to not let go of Nuri Sahin after the first half of the season, which also was not exactly great, also maybe factors into that. Lars, what's your rock bottom moment of the season?
You mentioned it earlier. I think it's actually the 2-0 away loss at Bochum, because, for all we said about Nuri Sahin, when he was let go, Mike Tulberg in 3 games kind of had that upturn. They won against Donetsk, won against Heidenheim, which actually I should have mentioned the Tulberg celebrations as maybe an honorable mention in terms of moment of the season.
For sure.
And the draw against Bremen when they were a man down for, 70 minutes or so. So there seemed to be an upturn, and then, some optimism with an actual head coach coming in, Niko Kovac. The Stuttgart game, okay, that's a good team. And Dortmund also scored an own goal, but the performance away to Bochum was just pathetic. Dumb goals, dumb mistakes. Dortmund arguably should have lost even bigger. And then also Kovac, I didn't like the reaction, although, in hindsight, we know that it wasn't, him trying to blow sugar up someone's behind, but rather, trying to be optimistic and give the team some structure. But just the performance level in that game was just so bad. And given that there had been this slight upturn against under Tulberg and a bit of optimism with a new coaching hire, I think to me that was actually rock bottom, which I agree with what Matthias says, makes it all the more miraculous what they've achieved thereafter.
Yeah, I think this is a very good nomination by you, Lars. It reminds me a little bit of this Onion headline, which is something like "Man who thought he lost all hope loses last additional bit of hope or that he didn't know he still had or something like that. And yeah, it's I remember it now how the hope of a turnaround under a new coach was sort of temporarily crushed then. So yeah, very, very good shout. Think it was then followed up by a scoreless draw against Sporting, but I think that was enough to secure the next round of Champions League football. But yeah, let's move on from rock bottom. Best game of the season award. For me, that's definitely the Barcelona game that you already talked about. Lars, do you have a different nomination?
I think when you factor in level of opposition and such, I think there's hardly any debate to be had here. I mean, arguably, you could say, the best Dortmund have played is maybe the 6-0 against Union Berlin, but then that's Union Berlin and not FC Barcelona and not a Champions League knockout game. So I'm not going to be cute about it. It was clearly the best game Dortmund played this season with high stakes, a very good opponent. So, yeah.
Matthias, do you have any other nominations?
I am, because at the end of the day, the problem with the Barcelona matches, of course, it really didn't matter. In terms of the tie, I think it mattered in terms of the season, giving the team a lot of confidence in the final stretch. But I'm going to go with the 2-1 victory away at Lille. After going down 1-0 and Lille playing really, really well over that tie, very uncomfortable opponent, and Dortmund turning that around and winning 2-1 and then winning the tie to move on. I think for me, that was one of the most exciting ones. Honorable mention, of course, scoring 7 against Celtic, but that was also because Celtic just decided to play absolute insane open football, where even a Nuri Sahin coached Dortmund side can score a bunch of goals. But I'm going to go with the 2-1 victory against Lille.
Yeah, I wonder if Maxi Bayer's goal will get a nomination in that game for goal of the season, because that was also an absolute stunner. But we'll see. So, last award of the general awards. It's the Hope Award. What from the last season encouraged us the most about next year. I'm really intrigued of what you guys are going to say, because I'm yet to make up my mind, so I'm probably just gonna peek over what the person next to me is writing down. Matthias, why don't you go first?
Well, the hope is really that kind of the catalyst coming after that Bochum loss, in the fact that, that was kind of the time where Dortmund could have completely given up utterly on themselves in the season. Obviously, there was still that weird match against Augsburg, a loss against Leipzig, which I don't think Dortmund deserved to lose. And there was a lot of momentum there. You could see it really building. And I think the home stretch, making it into the Champions League at the end, I think that gives me hope personally for next season. So it's really that run into the end and showing, oh, wait a minute, these are actually good players. This isn't a team of idiots, and the people are useful with a coach that also is rehabilitated. So I'm going to say the last 2 months of the season.
All right. Lars, do you have anything more specific, or is it also just a time frame?
Well, I would say something within that time frame, and that is the sudden ability to deal with tough moments in games. When you remember back to the Hoffenheim game where they blew 2 leads but still won. Against Gladbach, they came from behind to win. They were terrible for 45 minutes or so against Leverkusen, but managed to win that game. I think that's a quality that Dortmund has sorely lacked over the years. I don't know if it's necessarily something that will carry over to the next season, or whether that was just down to, being on this incredible run of form and results, which sometimes makes things go much easier. So I don't know how much hope I actually have, but if we wanted to be positive, which we are not necessarily known for on this podcast, then I would say obviously they're going to carry over. And my hope is that maybe they've flipped the switch, so to speak, in terms of dealing with tough situations during games, not crumbling under pressure and all that. And maybe in that same vein, obviously we are never going to talk about the game that never was on May 27th, but, a somewhat similar, obviously nowhere near as important situation against Kiel. And, all the excitement was over after 3 minutes or so. Maybe that also, falls into that sort of category of a bit more mental toughness.
Well, actually, I was just going to bring that game up when you talked about Dortmund's mental fortitude that they've maybe gained within the home stretch of the season, because I thought, Dortmund made it 1-0 early, then the red card, but there was still this very weird atmosphere in the first half after sort of 10-20 minutes, and I feel like even that sort of micro momentum, if you will, or lack thereof, Dortmund also did overcome with a nice Sabitzer goal, a little bit deflected early in the second half, and put these demons also to bed. I think it might have helped that Frankfurt did score late also in Freiburg. I don't know, but either way, another little thing they overcome. My Hope Award does not go to the run in, but to the running, because I think one of the biggest ailments of the last season was that this team was just chronically unfit. Now, there's a grain of salt to this, is of course with the upcoming Club World Cup and another difficult preseason. I don't know what shape this team is going to be in starting into the next season, but if there's one thing about Niko Kovac that I appreciate, that he managed to turn the stamina of this team around mid-season, which is incredibly hard to do, especially with the schedule that Dortmund have. So my hope is that Dortmund will be just in general a more fitter, more athletic team next season, and that alone should help them to a bit more consistency. And an honorable mention is also to the system change that Kovac did, and adding some, I don't know if I want to say simplicity, and I also don't know if it carries over, but playing players in their correct positions and highlighting their strength, I think has also had, and if Dortmund have found a groove going into next season, that to me is also something that sparks hope. But yeah, let's move over to the individual awards, and let's start off with the classic. Matthias, player with the best hair.
Oh, wow. That's the most important category for me as someone who's follically challenged. I'm going to go with Niklas Süle. I appreciate the frosting. And I'll go with Niklas Süle also because, it seems to work.
All right. I've Riasson actually. I don't know what the rules are, but I guess I'm the host, so I can kind of make them up. But currently, his off-season haircut, the pink hair, love it. So Riasson gets my vote. Lars?
Well, I'm going to go with the one that I'm most envious of, seeing as I'm getting older and more into Matthias's camp. So I'm going to say Rami Bensebaini.
All right. Can't really argue with that one either. All right, so late submission, but did make it into our awards. The Hummels Award for Best Tackling, brought into or submitted by Clark Hybe. Matthias?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of an individual moment of best tackling. And I know we talked about it pre-pod with Bensebaini, had a few really good last-ditch ones. But I'm always going to have to go with Schlotterbeck as just the best track-back, last-ditch tackler overall, because he seems to do it over and over again. So overall, I'm going to go with Schlotterbeck.
All right. I will nominate Bensebaini, and it is the tackle. There are a few candidates, but for me, it is actually the tackle that led up to the 2-1 goal in Leverkusen, where he won the ball off, I think it was Xhaka, but I'm not entirely sure anymore, on the sideline, hurt himself a little bit, but that tackle and this sort of win of possession was just an amazing tackle. It's maybe not a defensive tackle, but still something I really want to see from our players more often. And crunching challenge led to a goal, and of course a very important goal at that, because without Dortmund winning in Leverkusen, Champions League qualification arguably also would not have happened. So Bensebaini is my vote. Lars.
Yeah, maybe it's just recency bias, but the only one that actually springs to mind in terms of an individual tackle is the one you mentioned with Bensebaini against, it was Xhaka in Leverkusen, with the added bonus of Bensebaini getting hurt a little bit. So I think that shows commitment in tackling. So I'm going to go with that one as well, but maybe an honorable mention for at least 3 or 4 times when Dortmund were initially, or Dortmund's opponents were initially awarded penalties, and then referees actually saw that it was a good tackle. I don't really recall who made them, but I recall their...
Well, Bensebaini made one in Leverkusen too.
Yeah, and there were a few others as well this season. So, yeah, but in terms of the actual, well, factual award, it's going to Bensebaini for me as well.
Yeah. Category number 3, biggest disappointment, and these are individual awards, but I want to note that I have in my Excel spreadsheet here, I have also front office with Watzke, Kiel, Ricken, Mislintat, and I have coaches Tolberg, Schein, Kovac. So if you guys want to go off script and instead of a player pick someone else, or maybe someone entirely different that we can add to the list here, be my guest. So, Lars?
I think the easy answer would be to go with Nuri Sahin, but then I would argue that our level of expectation wasn't very high. Maybe he still didn't even meet those, but I think that's a bit boring. I'm going to allow Matthias to say Gio Reyna, so I'm going a bit off script and say Youssoufa Moukoko.
Ah, you stole it. Dang it. That's where I was going.
I mean, I actually wrote about the 3 losers of the season from a Dortmund perspective, and those were Schein, Reyna, and Moukoko. So I thought I was giving Matthias the opportunity to say Reyna, so I would take Moukoko, who did nothing for OGC Nice after October. I think he had a good start, scored twice in one of his first few games, and then was basically never seen again. And Nice are not going to take up their buyout option, and Dortmund are going to be stuck paying a player they don't want anymore a lot of money next season, or he's going to have to, lower his expectations quite considerably and move to Austria or something. So given what we all thought Moukoko might turn into at this point of his career, remembering that, 2.5 years ago he was at the World Cup and he's still eligible, but wasn't called up for the under 21 Euros this summer. I think the entire last 2.5 years of Moukoko's have been the biggest disappointment.
So, Matthias, are you just going to say the same as you just indicated, or will you find a new nominee?
Well, I mean, just to kind of underline what Lars just said, since the 20th of October, Moukoko played 22 minutes for Nice. I mean, 22 minutes since October, and hasn't played a minute since the 2nd of February. And most of the time, he wasn't even in the squad. So, I mean, that's a greatest disappointment, probably overarching and goes beyond just, for the season. It's very disappointing for the player and what could have been. But no, I will go with Gio Reyna. Personally, I'm going to tell you this. For me, Gio Reyna this season wasn't a disappointment because I didn't have any expectations. So how can you be disappointed if you don't expect anything? I would have gone biggest disappointment probably 2 seasons ago. But really, he is what I always thought he was. And that's why I'm going to say it's not a disappointment. He just really proved me right. So I'm not really disappointed about that. It's sad that I was right.
So did you nominate Gio, or is it still Mukoko?
I'm going to say with Mukoko, just because so much was expected and it's just been nothing at all. And so I'm very sad for him, the player, and have no idea what Dortmund are going to do with him or he's going to do moving forward.
All right. These are all good shots. I'm going with Jan Kutu.
I knew it.
Part of that...
that was so obvious from you, Stefan.
Part of that is my own ignorance, because I did not know the player beforehand, and part of it is the transfer fee that Dortmund are going to pay for him, which is about 25 million, and that's to me, so the player we got was the player I imagine we would get for 25 million euro signing. That discrepancy to me is the biggest disappointment. So yeah, it's very obvious, and we talked about it last episode. I've not written him off. I still think oftentimes signings like this need a lot of time to acclimatize to Borussia Dortmund. He might be a very good and useful player next season for us. He was part of the team that beat Barcelona, which we have nominated Game of the Season, and played really well in that. But overall, his defensive stats and output is just not enough. And, we've talked about the razzmatazz, also not quite there what I want from my Brazilian fullback / wingback. So Jan Kutu is my nomination. Lars, if you have any more venting to do why I'm wrong or why this is a stupid nomination, be my guest.
I mean, at least he played quite a bit, and you already mentioned him being part of a few important games. Like Gio Reyna was available for 37 matches this season, but played half as many minutes as Daniel Svensson. And I mean, maybe you just wanted to give another perspective, but you actually nominated Couto, who has done infinitely more this season than, both Reyna and Moukoko. So I knew it was coming, so I was bracing for it, but I still just don't really agree.
Yeah, that is fair enough. I think with Gio Reyna, we can agree that he's I think on paper, if you're not graded on a curve or whatever other weird nonsense I just came up with, I think he is definitely a bigger disappointment than Couto, but I just took a different approach because we just talked about these, so that is mine. But yeah, let's move on from the Clark Higby's submissions. Stieg Berkowitz with the surprise of the season, and I'm actually going with Rami Bensebaini because he is. And I'm almost giving him 2 awards here. To me, the most improved player of the season, and that is to me the biggest surprise. So yeah, I don't know if I just took away too much anticipation here, but I did not see that coming, considering how poor his stint before went. That he actually came relatively good toward the end of the season. Lars, who's your surprise, or what is your surprise of the season?
Well, I'm debating 2 things. One is Daniel Svensson being like an immediate impact player after coming over from Denmark, no Champions League experience. Actually not having played much because of the long winter break in Denmark, and then like seamlessly being a big part of what Dortmund do. But I think I'll actually go with, harking back to something stupid we said, or I said in that case, and that is, to the effect of, I cannot tell you how little I think of Niko Kovac as a head coach, which is what I said at the end of January when they were rumored to be interested in him as the replacement for Nuri Sahin, and obviously, he's kind of proven a point and made me shut up about him in those terms. So Niko Kovac actually coming good for Dortmund, having the kind of run-in they had, making it into the Champions League. To me, that is the biggest surprise.
Yeah, is a very good nomination. I think I had him second or third on my list. Matthias?
Well, I'm going to have to go with both of your suggestions. I actually had both of them on the list. I will have, but for me, I'd say Niko Kovac is the bigger one because just like Lars, I didn't have many expectations. Like we talked about in the last episode, I let myself get influenced also by, Wolfsburg, the chaotic time at Bayern, and kind of the negativity that surrounded him, and essentially forgot about the great work he did at Eintracht Frankfurt and setting that foundation for the success they've had ever since then. And so, Niko Kovac, definitely the biggest surprise of the season.
Yep, fair enough. Next category, best newcomer, meaning there could be a transfer, signing, or a homegrown product. Lars, who do you got?
This is where I'm going to give Daniel Svensson the nod, and that is because I interpret newcomer as in, someone we didn't expect to be this good. So, I mean, the best signing of the season inarguably is Zero Girassi, but I wouldn't call him a newcomer. So that implies to me, a level of surprise. And as I said in the previous category, I think Daniel Svensson came basically out of nowhere to be a very good player for them, and a potential foundational player for them, whom they've got for like a grand total of 8-9 million euros, which this sort of deal doesn't really happen these days anymore because scouting has gotten so much better. All these Scandinavian players are much more expensive, and not to mention from higher focus markets. So Daniel Svensson, to me, no level of expectation, and then this level of performance, to me, that is the best newcomer.
Matthias?
Well, yeah, I mean, Daniel Svensson, I wasn't expecting him to have the impact. I mean, we all know what Ian Maatsen did last season, and I wasn't expecting Dortmund to basically get another young left back who can have similar strong impact, and Daniel Svensson definitely did that. And on top of that, Dortmund get to keep him. So yeah, I mean, Girassi, of course, that's kind of the obvious choice. So I'll leave Stefan with the obvious choice with Girassi. But overall, best signing, just because also, man, that position, quality left back and left fullback or as a wing back, and young and good defensively and in an attacking sense, is so hard to come by. And so I'll have to go with Daniel Svensson as well.
I'm struggling with this one because I think that Girassi deserves it, but on the other side, Daniel Svensson is such an amazing signing for so little money. Although I think Dortmund also, with the buyout clause, got Girassi for on a relatively cheap deal. But considering the amount of goals that Girassi scored and the amount of assists that he had in this season, I really struggle to look past that. I think for him, he set a new record with the amount of goals he scored in the Bundesliga. I think was it 21 goals or so. It's probably the first striker to do this in this first season. Overall, in all competitions, he scored 34 goals. He had 8 assists. So in 45 matches played, he had 42 score points. There were stretches where he was not on top form, where I was hoping he'd be better, but he's still such an integral part to Dortmund's system that I'm nominating him. But I think Daniel Svensson deserves a honorable mention also because I just talked about what gives me hope, and I mentioned the running. I think Daniel Svensson is the leader in kilometers run since he arrived at Dortmund, if I remember it correctly. he is showing flashes of real footballing skill. And for how Koto maybe disappointed me on the right side, Daniel Svensson certainly exceeded these expectations. So I'm going to go with Girassi, but it's close, nearly split points, I want to say. So next category is most improved player, and to me that is Rami Bensebaini, as I said beforehand. So I don't want to discuss it much further. But considering how horrible he played in the season before, my hope that next season it will be Jan Kutu to win this award. Lars, who have you written down?
I mean, I have no one written down because we got the list 2 minutes before we hit record. But
mentally in your mind,
I mean, in the first half of the season, I think one of the talking points was that, for all the problems under Shahin, he did improve 2 players massively, and that was Bensebaini and Felix Metscher, for whom he found this position in defensive midfield, no longer, the Bellingham replacement where he kind of struggled a bit with, I think, like the physicality, because he had some injury concerns last season. Obviously, Metscher also missed quite a bit of time this season, but, when he played in front of the fence, he was really, really good, especially in the first half of the season. And if we wanted to consider the category to be like the most improved player within the season, then I would give a shout out to Waldemar Anton, who did not start well, but was very good, like in the last few weeks, especially once Nico Schlotterbeck went down. That could easily have the Real Dortmund season, and Waldemar Anton sort of picked up the baton. So having said all that, I'll actually give it to Emre Can, because I want him to get at least one shout out on this show, because he's gotten a lot of stick also from us over the years. And I think the move to put him in central defense has given him like a whole new lease at Dortmund. I could easily see them extend his contract, maybe not, as the captain and maybe with a little lower wages, but I think Emre Can, the centre back, is much more palatable to a lot of fans than Emre Can, the defensive midfielder. I also think him, putting his body on the line when he clearly was suffering from muscular issues and was barely able to train, but still put it all on the pitch during the matches. I know that's not necessarily, about most improved, but still, I just want him to get some recognition for, I would say, a solid C+ season, which already, exceeds expectations for Emre Can. And I think in terms of improvement, as I said, him moving to central defense has kind of changed the entire, outlook of his tenure at Dortmund.
I remember I said after the 2-5 loss away to Real Madrid that I never want to see him play another game for Dortmund again. Solely on this one moment where he got counterattacked to shreds, and I was extremely pissed about that. Obviously, I'm taking that a little bit back, and I think I have to apologize to Emre Can of being an emotional dickhead at the time. But that being said, I can very much sympathize with that. And one little point, not to really go back too far, even though it is 3 categories, but in terms of biggest disappointment, I think there needs to be also an honorable mention to Julian Brandt, whose season was not great. I don't even remember when the first goal was that he scored.
Against Freiburg, the free kick.
Yes, that I remember. I just don't remember what match day it was. Right here, match day 11. So yeah, shouldn't go unmentioned on a show like this. That Julian Brandt, of course, he did turn his form around very late in the season. Also candidate for most improved player, almost, considering how shitty he was for most of the season. But didn't want to let that go unmentioned. But I think all great points you just made about Emre Can. Lars, Matthias, your most improved player of this season, or from this season to last season, however you want to interpret it.
I'm gonna have to go with Felix Metscher. Definitely took a huge step forward in this season, and so to keep it short and simple, I'm gonna go with Felix Metscher.
All right. Fine. Unsung hero. I'm going to go first again, and I'm struggling with this one to really pick one out, but I think recency bias is playing a role for this one, and I think in the end it is actually Jamie Gittens for me, because I just rewatched the entire season in highlight clips, and the amount of times he saved Dortmund's bacon in the first half of the season, especially in the Nuri Sahin era, and the amount of points that he secured, I think in the end has gotten not enough credit, considering that he was not really considered by Niko Kovac toward the end of the season. And, of course, there are a lot of great candidates, Jürgen Riasson, for example, but I feel like we're singing his praises more than enough on the show. But Jamie Gittens did really perform really high on an individual level when most of the team did not. And, of course, at the time we did point it out, and I think he was a sung hero for that. But I still feel like in the grand context of Dortmund season, Jamie Gittens does deserve some praises for how well he actually played and what insane goals he scored. So that is my nomination. Intrigued to hear what you guys say. Matthias, who's your unsung hero?
I'm gonna say Gregor Kobel. I have my criticisms of him when it comes to ball distribution, but under Niko Kovac, he really proved again. I think a lot of that is down to what Niko Kovac did, how extremely good of a shot stopper and a goalkeeper is. So I'm going to go with Gregor Kobel.
Mm-hmm. Lars?
I'm going to take the unsung part quite literal and go with someone a lot of people might not even recognize, and that is Alex Clapham, the set piece coach, because at least from what I remember, set pieces weren't as big of an issue as they had been over the last few years, defensively and offensively. While not necessarily huge strength, there were a few moments, especially the Schlotter-Beckenbauer moment where he suddenly turned into the best corner taker in the Bundesliga for exactly one match day because he got suspended and then injured, but was still a nice moment. So I think it's hard to find someone who's actually unsung because we spend so much time talking about each and every player whenever they do something. So while I understand that you want to give like a positive mention to Gittens or Kobel, which I actually agree with because we were quite hard on him for large parts of the season, but he was very good in the second half. He was really good against Bayern, for example. He saved their bacon against Leverkusen. At Barcelona, despite shipping 4 goals, so I can understand both of these. But in terms of an actually unknown quantity to most people, I think Alex Clapham deserves some praise because set pieces were better than in the last few years, I would say, from just like a vibe standpoint, because I didn't look up any numbers or anything.
Yeah, I remember a lot of sad piece goals that Dortmund conceded, especially in the first half of the season. Like away to Union Berlin, for example, comes to mind. But many more. So yeah, I'm I don't know, putting a little bit of cold water on that nomination, to be honest. But I think you are right in terms of the turnaround throughout the season. I think Dortmund's set piece taking has improved, but I also don't have stats right now to back it up. Maybe Adam Dorowski can slide into our DMs a little bit later.
Only if I was right, please.
Yes. All right. Schmelle of the season. That is the best goal from an unlikely scorer, and I don't have it on my soundboard right now to play it for Lars and Matthias, but I'm going to edit it now. And with that, Matthias, who is the player or the goal scorer or the most unlikely scorer of the season? We discussed this beforehand because there are not that many candidates, but who's yours?
Yeah, I mean, with Guirassy gobbling up so many goals, there are a lot of predictable goal scorers. I'm going to have to go with Marcel Sabitzer, who didn't score at all until the last match day. And so, that was, saving it right to the end until he could score a goal this season. So that is somebody I did not expect to score anymore.
Lars?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we talked about this ahead of the show, and we were, I guess, close to scrapping the category outside of it being like a running gag on this show because of the Schmelzer sound thing. I mean, by default, almost it has to go to someone who only scored once, because obviously otherwise they can be considered unlikely to score. So I don't want to say Bensebaini again, because we are basically already determining that he's going to end up winning the entire thing, which I'm still not sure what exactly that means, what he wins. But so
I don't know.
I'm going to go with Sabitzer as well, because it clearly felt to basically everyone that he was just going to end up goalless this season, which was kind of a big talking point for some parts of the media. And then he's in a way, he scored the goal that got Dortmund into the Champions League, because given the way Frankfurt beat Freiburg, a 2-0 win for Dortmund would have been enough. So, I don't know.
Yeah. I'll be honest, yes, the candidates of players that have only scored once are Pascal Groß, who we all expected to score way more than just one goal. It's Daniel Svensson, Duranville, and Kani Chukwuemeka. So, there's not that much to choose from, but I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to be boring, and I'm also going to go with Marcel Sabitzer. Next category. Really intrigued what you will say. Assist of the season. Lars, do you have something in mind?
There are a few candidates. I want to give a shout out to Julian Brandt for a lovely weighted pass to Adeyemi against Leverkusen. Again, recency bias, because that's a goal I have somewhere in my memory palace, as it were. Obviously, quite a few good crosses from Groß. I remember really liking the Brandt cross for Guirassy against Sporting, which was perhaps the best headed goal of the season, if that exists. But
we can add it if you want.
No, God, no. We have enough categories where we have to scrape something together, Stefan. My assist of the season is quite possibly not even going to be an actual assist. Julien Duranville against Barcelona, where he left two players in the dust, stayed upright when he could have gotten down for a free kick. Tried to square it into the center of the box. One of the Barcelona defenders put it in the way of Guirassy, and he then put it away for his third goal of the game. So technically, probably not an assist, but just like in terms of a moment for a player who's been sparingly used, that sticks in my mind. So I'm going to give it to Duranville, because also it's the only way he's going to get mentioned on this show in a positive way.
Matthias, your assist of the season.
My assist of the season is actually going to be 4 assists of the season, and that is Pascal Groß against Union Berlin. I think that's the best way one can describe that entire match, is it was Pascal Groß against Union Berlin, with more than a hat trick of assists. None of them were like super crazy, but the fact that he did that all in one match was pretty amazing. Honorable mention, it was an assist from Daniel Svensson, and somehow my old brain can't remember exactly which match it was. It was near the end of the season.
Mecha.
Yes.
Here?
Very near to the end.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
Yeah, the final assist wasn't
correct.
it?
And I just thought that was, from a weighted pass and everything, it was near perfection. So that would be the honorable mention.
Yeah, I like that nomination. I'm actually going to go with Sergio Guirassy, and we could use the one against Bayern, which I really liked. Spectacular, almost a round of keepy-uppy before his shot got saved, and then the rebound was scored by Waldemar Anton. But that is my honorable mention from Guirassy assists. The one I'm actually thinking of is, I don't remember if it was the first or the second goal that Dortmund scored away to Real Madrid, setting up Daniel Malen in the box. It was a very simple yet perfectly weighted ball to Daniel Malen. Guirassy, I think, played that one with the back to his goal. I am a sucker for passes that are very lightly hit and yet perfectly put on a platter. To me, that really underscored the world-class elements of Serhou Girassy's game. He has not yet been knighted. But that is my assist of the season. And with that, we can move on to the goal of the season. Matthias.
Okay, well, I had two now, believe it or not, since we discussed this pre-pod, I actually picked two. And I was going to say Gittins against Bayern. Another solo. It's like it seems to be like a typical Gittins or Adeyemi type goal. Just a solo run, some dribbles, and then a great finish. But I'm going to go with Julian Brandt against Hoffenheim in that volley, just because it is an incredibly difficult shot to take and score technically.
Another Svensson assist, by the way.
And yes, Svensson assist. So I'm going to go with Julian Brandt against Hoffenheim.
Mm-hmm. Lars?
I would agree that is the best goal in terms of technical difficulty. But, I don't think it's necessarily the most exciting. You don't jump out of your seat for, a lovely weighted finish after a nice cross, even though we can all agree that is insanely difficult. And I think Niko Kovac said after the game, there's maybe 10 guys in the Bundesliga who can hit that, or maybe that was Sebastian Kehl, I don't quite remember. So it's definitely worth a shout. I also thought about giving it to Gittins against Bayern, where he left Konrad Laimer in the dust and with his weaker foot put it right next to Manuel Neuer's ear. That was a crazy finish, but I'm actually going to end up giving it to Gittins for another goal, and that is against Borussia Mönchengladbach, which a game they didn't win. I was in a restaurant for, very annoyedly watching it on my smartphone while waiting for the mains.
What you have?
Something Christmassy, because it was December 11th or so. Gittins moving past 3 or 4 guys in a tight space, lovely finish, right foot thumping it on the underside of the crossbar, which I think is one of the most satisfying things in football. So it's going to be that one, and also a quick honorable mention for the half volley of one Gio Reyna against Hoffenheim.
Yeah, another thumper. Then I guess I have to go with the obvious one, and that is, of course, Waldemar Anton's goal late in stoppage time away to Hoffenheim. I think it's not the prettiest goal, empty netter, obviously, or mostly empty netter. I mean, there was still one defender in goal. But of course, Dortmund had just basically bungled it again against Hoffenheim, which they already did earlier this season in a 1-1 draw at home, where Hoffenheim scored very late, I think just at the beginning of stoppage time. And of course, as Matthias and I gleefully discussed with the big helping of Schadenfreude, is that it was a controversial goal, and it's always very sweet to do that against Hoffenheim. And of course, it sort of did save the season. I remember myself being extremely enraged after the late equalizer from Hoffenheim, because it felt to me, first of all, it undid the beautiful Julian Brandt goal that Matthias nominated, and of course it just felt like Dortmund's almost back to old school, conceding from a throw-in that was a weird Kobel mishap. So to turn that disappointment and anger that was all brewing inside of me into unbridled joy, and we don't have a lot of late goals to talk about this season, and of course keep our winning run alive, and with that really helping to secure Champions League football. My nomination goes to Waldemar Anton for that goal, and with that we go to the last category that we have, and that is the player of the season. And Lars, why don't you start?
This would have been a 2-horse race for most people, I would assume, and then one of the horses had to be shot. I don't know if the metaphor really works, but I mean, it would have been between Nico Schlotterbeck and the one whom I am assuming we are all going to pick. And then Schlotterbeck got injured before, the crazy run-in really turned crazy, if that makes sense. So, obviously want to give him a massive shout out because I think he made a huge step forward in his first season without Mats Hummels at his side at Dortmund. Really turned into even more of a leader. Fairly few mistakes, a lot of positive moments. Him and Emre Can kind of keeping it together for even the worst stretches of the Nuri Sahin era. So with all that being said, I think it's pretty obviously Zero Girassi. You already mentioned the numbers. The consistency in front of goal wasn't always there. So, when we talk about like 34 goals, you said, I think, 7 of those came against Union Berlin and Barcelona, but still you have to score them. Obviously quite a few penalties as well. The one caveat I would say is the diving was getting a bit too much from him in parts of the season. I think he kind of got into his head a little bit, but you can't deny the level of production that Zero Girassi provided. I think he's like Dortmund's best player in general, and as such is also going to be nominated as the best player of this season for me.
Matthias, do you have a different player?
No, I mean, I'm going to agree Girassi is the player of the season. I'm going to give honorable mentions to the aforementioned Nico Schlotterbeck, as well as Gregor Kobel and Pascal Gross, who I think was pivotal this season as well.
Yeah. I mean, we could make a top 3 ranking if you guys want, and then give, 5 points to the winner or whatnot. But no, honestly, I think this is a slam dunk for Girassi this season for all the things you just said. Scored a lot of spectacular goals, but also just some tap-ins that a striker needs to score. Like I said, is a very integral part in Dortmund's system. He has done extremely well with the back to his goal. I think the 2 grains of salt about Girassi really are his diving and falling down, even though he did win a lot of penalties that way. But still, diving instead of taking a shot that I would value as a good chance is something that really annoys me, and it's something I also don't like to see from Dortmund players. I want them to play fairly. And while I enjoy a little bit of shithousery here and there, that's just not it for me. And of course, no, it of course escapes me what game it was where he missed a penalty that Emre Can was supposed to take. I think it was the Hoffenheim game, wasn't it? Lars, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm blanking on it as well.
But we all
remember it.
We all know it happened. I did not make it up. So if we now add up all the points, we have a split between Rami Bensebaini and Sergio Girassi in terms of who has the most. Both finish on 5. Lars, do you want to be the Dumbledore of the season and just give it to whoever deserves it more? Just like he always, at least in the first books, changes it to Gryffindor with a ridiculous stuff of points for Harry Potter and Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley and whatnot? Or are we just going to have it a tie?
Well, first of all, I want to say that Dumbledore didn't give it to the one who deserved it most. He gave it to Gryffindor, always. As a proud Ravenclaw myself, Stefan.
Of course. I knew when I waded into the Harry Potter lore that I was on very thin ice, because I remember not as well as I thought I did, but that is one thing that stuck in my head, that it sort of just rigged it in the end for Gryffindor.
Yeah.
So, do you want to do a little bit Yellowwallpod season what's rigging? Or
I'm prepared to rig the whatever out of this, because if we're being honest, there's one joke category in there with best hair, and I gave that to Bensebaini, so I'm going to amend my vote to Julian Riasson in order for Zero Girassi to be the rightful winner of I don't know exactly what.
Well, the Yellowwallpod Season Award, which is, of course, the most important individual esteem a Borussia Dortmund player can win. Matthias, do you want to rig it back? do you want to bring back Benzobaini or anyone else?
No, I think Kurasi is the deserved victor.
All right. Well, that is it. These are the Yellowwallpod Season Awards annually sometimes. As always, everyone out there, thank you for listening, and we'll be back relatively soon. I'm afraid because there's a Club World Cup to preview, but also I think there's some transfer news to discuss. Eventually, we'll see. But there's certainly some updates we can give. In the meantime, like I just said, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little format. And with that, until next time, goodbye.